Hello, rollers, and welcome back to Classing Up the Joint. This is the part of the show where we ask brilliant people basic questions. My name is Colin. I am the host here. I use they and he pronouns, and I am joined by another wonderful, fantastic guest who I'm going to let introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Michael J. Patrick. My pronouns are he, him, and I make a variety of things for D&D 5e as well as other games. In addition to that, I write and record the weird fiction podcast Nothing Is Wrong, as well as the dark fantasy fairy tale screw that. The dark fantasy fairy tale podcast, A Bird for a Heart.
Yeah, there's a lot of R's rolling in there. It's like easy to slur together. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. It is such a pleasure to have you on the show, and I am so excited to talk to you.
Good. Excited too.
Yeah. So we're one of the things that jumped out at me a little bit is kind of the your length and breadth of time playing D&D and all the games. But my first question for everybody these days is, what was it that first really got its hooks in you and made you kind of think, I want to keep playing this for forever. I want to write. I want to do all the things. Was it D&D and or what is the super heroic origin story of Michael J. Patrick and the TTRPG world?
Okay, so I first became aware of D&D as a concept probably around 1980 or so. I was 9 years old. It was mentioned on You Can't Do That on Television, a Nickelodeon Canadian television show, and also an issue of Games Magazine, or I think a couple years later, actually, had this article about this new game called Dungeons and Dragons and described it. I thought, oh, fuck, yeah, I want to play this.
Yeah.
A game where you play as a character and do things that there's like, I didn't know the word immersive at the time, but, and then I remember being at a comic book store in the Echelon Mall in New Jersey and convinced my dad to buy me this box set for a game called Star Frontiers by TSR, which I knew at the time was the company that made D&D as well. And I was so excited. I got this blue box Star Frontiers set home. I opened it up. I thought, this is going to be so good. I looked at the instruction book and it was like 60 pages long, which to me at the time was too fucking long. I tossed it across the room, like 10 years old, and forget it. Who would make a game with a 60-page rule book? And forgot about it for months. And then one day, it was raining out. I'm in my room alone. It's 81, 82, something like that. And I'm just like, I guess I'll read this book. And the introduction is all about like the history of the galaxy and where like the different species and races in this world came from. And it was fascinating to me at the time. I was a kid who was into sci-fi. And then the next couple of pages were just like pictures of humans with like sort of like biological diagrams, and also of the Vrusk and the Azarian and the Drellicites, the other species of this campaign setting. And they would show like their inner organs and things, and had their strength score and their stamina and other. It was a percentile system different from D&D, but it had this whole setup of what their abilities were. And that's when I realized this isn't a game. This is an instruction manual for creating a universe. So I guess that was the moment when I thought, oh yeah, I want to do this. And then it continued being reignited over the years. So I knew that it was a D&D type of game, but I didn't know the term role-playing game at the time. And it was probably mentioned in the book somewhere, but that particular phrase didn't really catch on to me until probably years later when I was reading Dragon Magazine regularly. And I had some cousins who I would play it with, and they had a friend who played D&D who was an expert. He'd been playing for 4 whole years at that point. And and the game had only been around for less than 10 years at that point. So he was
that's Jeb getting in there like very, very early.
And I was like, well, cool. We got some modules from him, or my cousin bought them, or probably shoplifted them. We were miscreant lads.
That's what happens in kind of like preteen years in everywhere. Oh yeah,
So
I have an entire DVD binder that I definitely did not pay for of like 45
stick it
different
to the
movies.
man.
Yeah.
Stick it to Ted's Engine House in Pensacola, New Jersey. No, it was a small
Mm-hmm.
train shop that had D&D stuff in the back. But the um my cousin was like, "Can we run this?" And he brought me the Isle of Dread, which was a Tom
Mm-hmm.
Moldvay. It was for the expert set. So back, like, there was the chainmail set,
Yeah.
and then white box, and then AD&D and basic D&D came out at the same time as two separate versions of the same
Mm-hmm.
game. And then there was like the sort of revamped basic D&D set and expert set. The BECME is called now, basic,
Mm-hmm.
expert, champion, master, immortal, I think is what it stood for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Tom Moldvay wrote a lot of the modules for that series. And he wrote the Isle of Dread, which was a lot of people's
Yeah.
first campaign world at my age. And I remember trying to play this module, trying to figure out how to do it. But all I had was Star Frontiers, which was a percentile system that,
Uh-huh.
you roll D100 for your ability scores. And if you had a strength score of 75 and you had to try to do something, you had to get 75 or less to be successful
Right.
or something like that. And, um, and I modded it. I said, well, okay, this has a
Wow.
strength score of 10 is average, and 18 would be like 100. So I just kind of like mathematically figured
Uh-huh.
out an approximation. So I was like doing game conversions at age 11 before I knew that was a thing from
Awesome.
one system to another. And and then when Magic was involved, I was just like, I don't know, it's Magic. You do whatever you want, because again,
Mm-hmm.
I was playing with other,
Sure.
tweens, and none of us knew what the hell we were doing. And we had fun and were confused. And then when I went to my cousin's friend's house and played for the first time, um, we went through another Tom Moldvay module which is one of my favorite modules of all time, called Castle Amber.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a classic killer dungeon fun
Yeah.
house that a lot of people of modern sensibilities hate. But I went in with first I go to this guy's house and I show him my character sheet. And I was trying to figure out how to play actual D&D at this point, but I didn't have a player's handbook. I knew that
Mm-hmm.
ability scores had to be from 3 to 18, but I figured I can fudge some numbers here. So I had a couple 20s in there somehow,
Sure.
which
Well,
was
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah. No,
mathematically
that's
possible. And he like basically erased those numbers and made them more reasonable. So this is what your ability score should be for your 4th level wizard. You should have
mm-hmm.
a strength of 20. And
Hey, buff wizards are all the rage now, right? Let's get rid of the
uh,
noodle armed stereotype.
I went through this module, and there's a banquet hall scene where you get this ghostly food. And my cousin, who had done the module before and loved to use meta gaming a lot,
Yeah.
um, would know which foods to eat. Oh, if I eat the green beans, I'll gain +3 to my constitution, or whatever. It wasn't
Sure.
exactly that, something like that. And everyone else that I was playing with, they would eat something, they'd have to do a saving throw, and then they would get a bonus. And I was like, I want to try this too. And my cousin said, try the mushrooms. So, yeah, okay, I'll try the mushrooms. And I did a saving throw, and I died instantly. Well, toadstool poisoning.
Ah,
My
it is
first
one of
character ever
those
died.
modules. Uh-huh.
Yes. And I was like, what? He's just dead? Like, that's it? I hate
Yeah.
this fucking game. And the DM rips up the sheet and everything, so I can't just be like, well, wait, no, he's my character. And
Yeah.
it was very upsetting. And I'm pretty sure my cousin set me up. He knew that the mushrooms were
Oh
poisonous.
yeah, no, that's just
Yeah.
that sounds like 30 years later, the prime opportunity to just nice little payback of his character.
Oh, no, I'm doing that actually. I put his character as
Uh-huh.
one of the villains in a module that I'm writing. But
Perfect.
so
Perfect.
yeah.
I love that. I Okay, so first because I'm thinking about it, do you still play Star Frontier? Is that system did that in any way like lead to Starfinder or like kind of the Pathfinder
I mean, I'm
sci-fi
sure
things?
that
Yeah.
to some extent the players maybe, or the
Sure.
designers might have been influenced by that, as in Traveler and some other games. But I guess Starfinder maybe is more Spelljammer.
I
Oh,
think
no,
so.
Starfinder is
Yeah.
more futuristic though. It's not. But
I haven't played it enough to know for sure, but I was curious seeing like just with the
yeah,
names being slightly similar.
the
Mm,
trademark of Star Frontiers is a little bit vague as to who owns it at this point, I think. And
uh-huh.
one of the children, I think, of Gary Gygax tried to, a few years ago, start a new company called TSR because I think they were legally able to and make his own
Okay.
version of Star Frontiers. And I believe that he went out of his way to make it a non-woke version, not that it was ever woke to begin with.
Oh,
I,
okay. Sure.
I could be throwing in some of my
Yeah.
fuzzy memories. It was maybe 5 years ago or less, but
What? I mean,
and
that
as far as I
sounds
know,
like something we'll look up for info dump.
that did
Yeah.
not go over well at all. And I remember looking at what they had, and it had different species and everything. It wasn't Star Frontiers in any way other than the name and the fact that it took place in space. I don't think there's
Mm-hmm.
any other connection. But the few things from Star Frontiers did kind of eventually get into Spelljammer, at least the latest version, and maybe some other things along the way. Like the Drellicites were sort of like plasmoid beings that looked like silly putty come to life,
Mm-hmm.
and they
Mm-hmm.
became the ooze creatures or whatever they're called in the latest Spelljammer.
Yeah,
And
I think there's still plasmoids.
the
Mm-hmm.
Azarians, which were sort of like a cross between a chimpanzee and a flying squirrel, became the Hadozi.
Oh,
They
wow.
changed the name, but
Okay.
it's the same
Yeah.
basic build.
Sure.
And I
Sure.
guess the Vrusk are kind of like the Thri-kreen, but Thri-kreen actually I think existed in D&D before
Yeah.
the Vrusk were
Yeah.
made. And also the Vrusk
Wow.
in Star Frontiers were more centaur-like. Like they had like an
Mm-hmm.
insect, like a praying mantis body with
Sure.
like a long
Like
abdomen.
multiple long abdomen and legs
Yeah,
and
and
like
then and
sort of
then
a
and
thorax
then
that's
a humanoid
upright.
abdomen. Yeah. But
Wow.
so they were
Yeah.
not quite the same as Thri-kreen,
Yeah.
but it was kind of like that's close enough. You want a
Sure.
bug, you got a bug.
I,
But
you know, I, yeah, I'm also, again, kind of with looking at the history and how things have changed. I feel like, uh, sorry, the mod you mentioned was Castle Amber.
yes,
Uh,
or Le
um,
Chateau d'Amberville, I
yeah,
think is the French name.
yeah, and my experience with that comes from like I run games for kids, and I was looking for something to do, and I asked the internet what to do with kids that like they have memorized the entire handbook, know what to do,
Hmm.
and people are like, hey, check out this thing from the '80s called Tomb of Horrors, and so
No, that's child
well.
abuse.
I mean, they loved it. I wasn't quite as mean as I could have been, but one of them definitely just saw, like in that very first hall at the end of it, there's a weird demon face sculpture with just a perfect sphere of
Hmm.
black in its mouth, and this kid goes, "I walk over and put my head inside it." And I'm like,
Of course you did.
because I am a nice DM when it comes to my kids. It was like, you put your hand inside it and you feel a tingle and you pull it back and you have no hand. Do you really want to put your head in there? But where I'm going with this, I feel like there are a not insignificant number of modules from earlier D&D, 80s and 90s that really we've put it before as like it seems like Gary Gygax got annoyed by his players being clever and wrote dungeons
Hmm.
to fuck
Oh,
with them.
the vast majority, like the Disenchanter was
Hmm.
a creature from AD&D that would make your magic items stop being magic items, or the
Yep.
Rust Monster. This is
Yep.
all just or Tensor's floating disc was his son came up with that one. I don't know if this is the
Hmm.
same son from the other
Sure.
story, but because his name was Ernest and Tensor is an anagram for Ernest. Those guys
Yeah.
always used anagrams. And it was because he wanted his character to have a spell that would allow him to carry all his gold. And it was very much
When
everything
you
that they
think
did
about it,
back
you've got a
then.
few hundred gold, and that's like a
Right.
giant armful that weighs 90 pounds or something. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like
Um,
they were everything they were doing was, well, I want to do this in the game, so I'm going to make that be a rule. And then it
yeah.
became a rule.
Yeah. Do you think as you've kind of watched D&D and other games grow over the length of time you've been involved in playing, has that style of writing modules stuck around, or kind of like I feel like we've sort of shifted away from that, but again, I have the perspective of someone who's been actively playing and deeply enmeshed in this world for like 5 years, not 40 as
Right.
it may be.
So you get the ones like even in the 80s, there was already a sentiment against that sort of thing.
Mm,
When I was
mhm.
growing up, there was the role players ROLE versus role players ROLL argument was already in existence,
Sure.
and I was an avid reader of Drag magazine from about the age of 13 till almost 30, I think,
Mhm.
and it didn't exist much longer after that. But
Yeah.
the I would pick up the magazine and read it from cover to cover and like every article, even about games I'd never played before, like Top Secret or some other games. I was like, well, what's this game about? And I'll read this article. Maybe
Mhm.
I'll understand more about this other game. And I would read the letters, I read the ads and everything. And there were, people who were already at that point having these uh, conversations about,
Yeah.
you know, role versus role playing and killer DMs versus people that just want to play act. There was even in the forum section of so Drag Magazine had two letter sections. One was where it was just letters to the editor, and one was where people would like a forum on the internet would just
Mm,
mouth
mhm.
off, and then the next issue would be as per Brian so and so's letter of last month. I would like to say, and that's actually my first published credit in life was in one of those letters in like
I
1993 or so.
what did someone say that made you feel strongly enough
It
to
was
write back, if you remember?
at at that time it was part of the role play versus role play argument,
Mhm.
and I was at the time very much like someone wrote something along the lines of uh you play actors want to just play pretend and
Mm.
yammer on in funny accents instead of getting the job done of killing the bad guys or something like that. And he said just because role plays in the name doesn't mean that should be part of the game. Baseball isn't all about bases and balls. and
Ah!
and this was like 20 or 22-year-old me, give or take, with a
Yeah.
chip on my shoulder. And I was very much like, excuse me, sir. you know
Yeah.
you tried to make a point and failed utterly.
Well, I mean, really, baseball is about nothing but
But
base.
like,
You got to
and
add bats and gloves,
I
but
went
like,
off for a while, and it was
yeah.
probably shitty whatever I said. But I remember ending with something like, "And while baseball is not just about bases and balls, try playing it without either of those things. See how far you
Hmm.
get, or something like that."
It's not baseball. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Where do you land? Where have you landed at this point on the role ROLE versus role, or kind of the
It
larger questions
it
there of like,
is, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's a continuum, and you have
Hmm.
to mix them all together. And each player that you play with at any given table is going to do more of one than the other usually. And some players don't do any of either and just kind of sit
That's
there and
true.
wait till it's their turn and say, "Wait, what's going on?" But
Those
um,
are the players we love to have
I
and be like,
know.
hey, is this the game for you?
Did you want to play? And
Yeah.
I do a decent amount of like professional DMing. I have like
Hmm.
at least 2 games a week where I'm being paid to DM, and the players paid to be there. And I think, well, you paid for this. Is this what you want to do? You paid to look at your phone for the next 4 hours, and then they come back every week, so they must be having fun. I don't know what they're getting out of it, but good for them.
You're getting something, surely.
Uh,
Yeah. Um, do you, well, in your own DMing, do you have a preference in that continuum leaning towards one or the other that you have found after
You
many,
know,
many games?
I try to mix up as much as I can.
Hmm.
For years, I had this habit of starting with like, okay, this time it's going to be a small setting. It's going to take place in this one little town. They're going to like kill 100 rats in the
Hmm.
basement until they get to
Hmm.
level 2, and then they're going to have to fight a wolf, and then eventually a werewolf, and then each, and then. But it's just gonna be
Yeah.
just like minor local stories, but by level 5, I have them killing God, and
Hmm. Sounds about
and
right.
then it gets more and more complicated, or I'll have like because I try to like I want to make the world believable, so then all the villains have to have backstories, and the world has to make sense. It's like, well, why does magic even exist, and where do elves come from in the first place? And I write so much backstory stuff that I realize will never see the light of day, and
Yeah.
I regret it every time. And
Yeah.
so what I really am doing now, especially because 5e is geared more towards dungeon crawls or wilderness exploration. It's
Cool.
not necessarily a combat game or a role playing storytelling game, I should say. It's not so much a storytelling game as and a combat game as it is an exploration game. That's like
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
D&D is best at.
And one, I feel like it sounds like you were trying to make sure that that when you were writing scenarios, that it could lean to one side or the other of that spectrum very heavily, depending on DM and player desires.
That's what I'm
Because
trying to do. Yeah.
yeah,
Successful, I don't know.
yeah,
But yeah,
fair enough.
I like my current adventure that I've been writing. I've released a couple free one shot dungeon based, or one takes place in the woods and in a village,
Hmm.
but dungeon crawly storylines that could, in most cases, be run in one night. Um, I've
Yeah,
run two of them so far, and they each took place in one session. I've run them each twice actually, so I've had a little bit of experience just to like play test them out.
yeah.
And one is more of a mystery called The Wolf of Moonbreak, and that's free on Drive Through RPG. And the other one is called The Tomb of the Rotting Priest, which is like
Hmm.
a really like this is a dungeon. You go through here,
Yeah.
there's goblins, but the goblins have black eyes and they're attacking with wild abandon. Why is that happening? So there's a
Hmm.
central mystery that you can unlock by going through the dungeon. And the Wolf of Moonbreak is about the village is being
Yeah.
harassed by a werewolf. But is it a werewolf? Maybe it's something else.
Cool. I
Something else.
It is. It's wait, spoilers. As a brief aside, we will have links to all of these things in show notes. You should go check them out. They're going to be awesome. Bring them into your games. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your mid-roll. It is I, your host, Colin, here to thank you once again for listening. It is so nice and so important, and it feels so good that you are here with us. And also to remind you that if you never want to hear me say that again, if you just are excited about the show, if you love what we're doing, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/The Roll Report, where also, for as little as a single dollar a month, you can submit questions for our interview guests. Only our friends and supporters on Patreon can submit questions, and only they will get to hear the answers. We've got some really incredible guests coming up as usual, and if you want to hear their answers to your questions, head on over to Patreon. Also, you can follow us on social media. We are at The Roll Report Cast on Instagram and TikTok, and now on Blue Sky. Ooh. Follow us there for announcements about upcoming guests once they have been booked, and then you will find out if you have interesting and amazing and unusual questions for all of them. But thank you so much for listening. That's really all. We are so grateful you're here with us and hope you are enjoying this episode. Back to the show. Um, what was the first module or adventure that you published? And when you look at it now, do you think like I was really onto something, or oh my God, I have to rewrite this?
So the first thing I ever had that was published.
Mm-hmm.
So
Or
so
honestly,
like
or if it was like
after
something for your home game.
yeah,
I'm
after
what?
decades
Mm-hmm.
of playing, I had some friends that wanted to play D&D online about 2015, 2016, and we talked about making a podcast of it, and we did that for a couple of years. It was called it's you can't find it anymore. All the
Mm.
files are gone, I think, from the internet. We couldn't pay for it was before
That's quite a feat, honestly. Usually, the
it was
internet holds on to
yeah,
things
it was
forever.
well, nobody wanted it. It was
Mm.
before Acast, and so we did it on
Mm-hmm.
SoundCloud, and I couldn't keep spending the $15 a month to, keep
Sure.
that hosted. I think you can get like one or two episodes. It was called Dissonant Whispers, and that was with a couple web cartoonist friends of mine, Matt Wilson, Diana Knock, and Daisy McGuire, along with a couple other friends, Abby and Jerry. Some other people would play with us occasionally, but we did about 69 episodes, which I was proud of that number because it was the same
Mm-hmm.
amount of number of episodes as the Balance arc. I was like, I wanted to at least match them in
Cool.
in number of episodes.
Yeah.
But I don't think we ever even released all the episodes though. But then the next thing that I did, which I consider that publishing of a sort, but the
Yeah.
next
Yeah, absolutely.
adventure I did that was like published in print or in PDF form at least was when my friend Matt Getz, no relation, um, he said, no relation to Matt Gates, the horrible
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
politician.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. Matt emailed me and said, "Hey, do you want to write an adventure for Iron Kingdoms, which is a D&D, currently a D&D 5e setting. It's been through many different iterations over the
Sure.
past 20 years. But it was originally Privateer Press, but now they're run by Steamforge Games. But he said, "Do you want to do some adventures for uh, the Iron Kingdoms?" I said, "Yes, sign me up." I have no clue about Iron Kingdoms at all. I know it's steampunk with robots. That's all I knew.
Sure.
And
Awesome.
so I
Great
like
place to
immersed
start.
myself in it and wrote half of a module. Brian James, who's written a lot of stuff about the Forgotten Realms, he wrote half of the module and I wrote the other half. It was called Escape the Mind Slavers,
Mm-hmm.
which um was kind of like their version of Mind Flayers,
Yeah.
but very different mechanically. And he wrote the first half, which took place in a dwarven city, and I wrote the second place, which takes place in the dungeon, which I felt more say it was about the escape part. Um,
Sure.
and it's a brutal module for low level characters,
Uh-huh.
and like but the Iron King is a brutal setting. And then I wrote a couple more adventures in that same setting for him, and hopefully we'll get to do so again. I don't know, where that company is at right now with releasing stuff,
Sure.
but
Yeah. And so like looking back at those, almost a decade later, uh I think the broad question is like, how do you feel about them a decade later? And like more specifically,
mm,
are there things that you would like to change with a decade more writing experience and
uh,
new D&D experience, I guess?
I would never want to change a thing that's already out there. Like let
Sure.
it, do what it can on its own. But
Hmm.
I always bring that forward with what I want to do next.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
totally.
yeah, and I like my current thing with the dungeon company is the setting that I'm writing the Wolf of Moonbreak
Hmm.
and um the Temple of the Rotting Priest and also the upcoming, which is going to be my big. It's a 10 level dungeon. That's not quite a mega dungeon by most standards.
Pretty big.
It's 10 levels with about 8 to 20 rooms per level. So it's
Hmm.
100 and some, I don't remember now, 120 or 130 level rooms. Um, it's about a 100-page project.
Yeah.
And that is going to be the thing that's coming out soon from me, hopefully within the next month. And that all takes place in my dungeon company setting, which is basically my kids were playing a game called Lethal Company, a video game. I don't know if you're familiar
Hmm.
with it, but you travel to different
Passingly. Yeah.
planets, find salvage, bring it back, and if you don't hit your quota, you die. I didn't want to make it that brutal because it's D&D players don't want to just die at the end of an adventure. So I want to do something like that, like the dungeon, like Lethal Company. I stole the name, just called it the Dungeon Company. But the idea is that you work for this company that sends you outfits, you send you into dungeons to get
Hmm.
treasure. They take 10% of your haul and first rights to buy whatever magic items you have. And it
Sure.
was just like a good conceit for just to get people like why are we doing this, and you have a simple explanation for why, because I like D&D works really well as a dungeon exploration game.
Hmm.
And so the lost vault of Zarnak is like we have to find the vault of Zarnak. We think it's
Yeah.
somewhere at the bottom of this dungeon. They don't know how deep the dungeon is, but it's 10 levels, so now you know how deep it is. And I've been going through this with my Wednesday night group, and they just got to the end of the dungeon and
Hmm.
sort of like figured out like the secret of the dungeon and why it is. And again, I can't help myself. I tied it into this whole like cataclysmic thing that happened thousands of years ago, that it's
Yeah.
why the world is the way that it is. And I meant it to be like, no, it's just a dungeon, just looking for treasure. But I have lore creep, I guess you could call it. I just can't.
Well, I
do that.
think there's I like lore creep just because like scope creep is a big thing that we all know about. But I also think that one of the things that kind of draws a lot of people into RPGs is your ability to tell big bombastic interconnected stories that might last from campaign to campaign to campaign within your group at least. And again, like what's more exciting as a player, a dungeon that you just go through and then there's like a big vault and a chest at the end with
Right.
a ton of money, or finding out a really cool piece of something that connects this random dungeon you're in to a larger world and the setting that you're playing in.
Yeah, I'm hoping to keep doing that, and but
Mm-hmm.
of course, I also have terrible ADHD and I already have like 3 other settings that I wanna write or possibly
Sure.
other games. I've been working on something called Diesel and Dragons, where I've made some subclasses for 5e, um, that would be in a sort of, Mad Max world, but still with
Mm.
everything you have in D&D, but also
Mm-hmm.
motorcycles and
Sure.
cars and people chasing through the desert. That is a little tricky to get the vehicle rules to mesh with the
Mm-hmm.
movement rules of D&D because a car conceivably can go faster than almost any creature in D&D on foot.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I've
Or
been
it's
working on, like, ways to make that work, mechanically without being too
mm-hmm.
unbalanced, but then also, I've thought about maybe I will just convert that to Daggerheart instead and see if that works and
Sure.
call it Diesel and Daggers instead of Diesel and Dragons, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so we'll see how
Why
that
not?
goes,
Okay.
and I also have this, I had this idea a few years ago back when the OGL debacle first started, and everyone and their mother was like, "Let's make our own game." And I
Mm-hmm.
was working on an idea that was a 2D12 based system that that was very different from Daggerheart, other than the fact that it uses 2D12s. But
Sure.
and it was going to be for the space opera, not Star Wars, but a game where there are somewhere halfway between Star Wars and Firefly. Like you're playing
Mm-hmm.
these
Sure.
scoundrels with laser blasters, but maybe there's also a magical force of some sort. And
Right.
that's mostly just been some vague ideas and notes in a Google Doc that I just haven't gotten around to do anything with. But after recent Daggerheart developments, which I know you know about,
Oh,
I thought, well, maybe I
we have
should make it for
talked
that.
about them. Yeah. So I kind of think again, kind of from the longer perspective that you have, like the again, broad questions like how do you feel about Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins joining Daggerheart slash a new, very publicized, very prominent system coming into play? Is that good for the TTRPG ecosystem and community as a whole to have something that really maybe seems capable of knocking D&D off of top post?
Maybe. Yes, I think
That is
so.
a totally fair
Yeah.
answer for
I
sure.
mean, I think that like in the 80s when I would
Hmm.
play D&D and I would play Star Frontiers with my cousins and my friends, and then we discovered another game around 84, 85 called Champions. You've probably heard of that one as
Hmm.
well. Champions was the superhero role playing game, but that was the title. There were other superhero role playing games, but that was the superhero role playing game. And oddly enough for me, I got into comics because of Champions, because my cousin who knew
Interesting.
all the stuff about the X-Men and other comic book
Sure.
characters, um, would come up with all his ideas for his characters. They were all just Wolverine in different suits. But um, I was like, well, I need to start reading these comic books. I knew who Spider Man was. I watched cartoons. I read comics occasionally, but at like age
Yeah.
13, 14, I didn't collect comics seriously at that until then. I just ate a piece of pepperoni and now I'm regretting it while I'm trying to talk. But so I got into superhero comics primarily as research for my role playing games, and
Uh-huh.
and then collected comics, and then through that got into cartooning and made friends with lots of web comics people when the internet was eventually invented.
Yeah.
And so that all like even now, like a lot of people that I play D&D with, I have my online friends and my IRL friends, and my online friends are
Sure.
almost all from the webcomics background, or at least connected to that in some way or other.
Mm-hmm.
And it also skewed my idea of what a standard table is, I think, because webcomics is a very diverse
Mm-hmm.
LGBTQ friendly group for the most part.
Yeah.
And so when I was playing D&D and other role playing games from like 2005 to 2020 or so, or and today for that matter, still doing it. It was mostly with like a broad spectrum of people.
Yeah.
And when I would see how racist, homophobic, transphobic comics, science fiction, and other fandoms are, I thought, well, not role playing games. All my friends are all trans, non binary.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out that I had a limited view. I was in a
Well,
bubble.
I mean, I think I kind of talked about this with our guests. Like, I think we sort of self-select which part of
Right.
the RPG community we'd like to be a part of, you
Sure.
know, and opting into the most inclusive, most diverse community is a choice. And then you're going to have those people, and you're going to see those people a lot more.
Mhm.
Um, and I think also on that note, you mentioned uh, what I think one of the modules we talked about early is like explicitly being written very anti woke, and my understanding of kind of the broader history of how D&D specifically and some other RPGs were approached is very reflective of the times. That in the 80s when it came out, not only all goblins and orcs are always evil, you can always kill them, it's fine. There was Gary's biological determinism that female characters can't have strength higher than 16 when the max is usually 18, and like that sort of shit. And over the multiple editions, D&D especially has moved away from that. Um, I'm not going to say do we think that's a good thing, but uh, what is the actual question I'm trying to ask here? It has that been has the community as a whole taken these changes positively as much as you have seen, or the communities that you are a part of reacting to
Um,
official canonized lore becoming more inclusive?
the thing about role playing games in general is
Mm.
that you don't need any of that shit. You don't need
Mm-hmm.
any of like you get a set of rules, some dice or whatever, a Jenga tower, whatever, a spinner, whatever you're
Sure.
using to randomize, and paper and pencil, and everything else you don't really need. It's all just window dressing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why WotC is having so much trouble trying to figure out how to monetize this game that plays
Yep.
in your head, because they can't get in there yet.
Yeah.
Someday they'll figure out a way, but not yet. And I think that like you said about self-selecting, you're going to play with people that you like to play with. I was against the idea of dwarfs, of orcs being explicitly evil, in the like late 80s, early 90s, probably.
Yeah.
Even like as a kid, I remember my cousins, I would play games and I would be like, okay, so here's a dungeon where there's a bunch of kobolds. They're just slaughtering kobolds left and right. And they get to the last room, and I had to put a room where the kobold young sleep, they're babies. They
Mm-hmm.
live in this cave. It wouldn't make any sense for them to
Sure.
not have their
Yeah.
non-combatants with them. And my cousin's like, okay, starts killing the babies too. What are you doing? These are babies. Yeah, but they'll grow up to kill us if we don't kill them now. And I was like, wow, that is fucked up.
Huh.
I thought
Yeah.
maybe I would give them like a moral, like, oh, what do we do now? We've killed off their caretakers because we were just
Uh-huh.
looking for treasure. We think of them as nothing but monsters. And then um I thought maybe there might be like a pause for a moment, like, oh wow, what are we
Sure.
doing? And I was like probably 14 or 15 doing that,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking like that might be interesting as a story beat, not even thinking about like I'll show them that it's wrong to hate kobolds. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
I just I'm like I'm not trying to act like I was so aware of social issues at that time, or the optics
Well,
of
no, no, but
racial
I think
determinism in games, but
yeah. But I think
I
it's interesting that at 14 you were already like, I would like to present my players with a bit of a moral dilemma
or
here
something, yeah, to
related to
make
an
it more
assumption that they've
complex.
made.
And I was utterly devastated by how quickly they said no, fuck that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's just,
Yeah.
well, wow. Uh Did did that change? Did that particular group, like your early D&D group, did that change at all as you all grew together?
Oh yeah. Like
Hmm.
I'm not super close with my family anymore.
Sure.
I see them, once, twice a year at events and stuff, but like we're not like, they don't play
Yeah.
any role playing games anymore and stopped probably by the time they were, 16,
Shame
17.
on them.
You know,
Their
I,
loss.
I remember being about 16 years old and my mom asked me, like, what is it that you want to do with your life, Michael?
Hmm.
I said, well, you see these games I'm playing? People make them. I want to be one of those people. And there was a lot of, well, that can't happen. That's not a thing. Like, no, no, they exist. So
Yeah.
somebody's making them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Dragon Magazine used to have like articles in like the mid '80s where they would do profiles of the employees at the Lake Geneva office of TSR. I want to be one
Hmm.
of those guys. They're having fun at work. That's what I want to do
Yeah.
for a living. But by the time I was old enough to even consider that, most of those people had already left the company, and they had, it was before Wizards of the Coast took over, but
Uh-huh. I was gonna say that
again,
sounds like a little bit the Lorraine Williams tenure of like
yeah,
early mid '90s. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh.
and I was
Mm,
also not any. I had no clue. I mean, I spent the '90s adrift,
hmm.
as a neurodivergent person that couldn't get through college and
Sure.
barely managed high school, and ADHD hadn't been invented yet,
Yeah.
or it
Yeah.
had been, but I remember at that time finding a book in like the early '90s that said, it was something about ADHD and something about the orange lettering on a blue background caught my attention. I looked at the book and read the back and said, "Oh, this is about me." And
Uh-huh.
my friend who was with me at the time said, "Don't be one of those people that picks up a book about some disease and thinks you have it." Like, no, no, this is
You're
this is
like,
like
no,
spot on.
actually, I really
Like,
think this
I
is
don't think
this
that
is the
about
thing.
anything else, just this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean you know, it took me a while to get to the point where I was
Sure.
actually in a situation where I could make games for fun and profit, to some
Yeah.
extent. It's not a lot of profit, but like, like I said, my friend Matt Getz, when he emailed me and gave me that chance, which put some credentials next to my name that I can show to
Yeah.
other publishers, I'm really grateful for that. And when and just like they, even before that, I was publishing stuff on like Drive Through RPG. Just like
Hmm.
I saw people made battle maps. I thought, I can do that. I can draw a
Hmm.
map and make it look okay in Photoshop and post that for 50 cents a pop. And if
Yeah.
if I
Yeah.
sell a
Why
million
not?
of them, that's 500,000. You don't sell a
Yeah.
million of them. My greatest seller still sells to this day. Is free. It was called Tomb of the Vampire. I just made it all in Photoshop using just
Hmm.
like different filters to create
Yeah.
different levels of perspective, and it's like mediocre at best, but it's free, and it's a place with a
Everybody loves a
coffin,
good
and
free
like
thing.
how
Hmm.
many times does the DM go, wait, I need a coffin and a place for a vampire to pop out? This is perfect. And so
Hmm.
like I think I've sold like 1,000, and I say sold,
Yeah.
given away like 1,000 over the
Yeah.
past 10 years, which is not a lot for anything.
It's what's a certain point. So it took me a few months of kind of like trying to create the podcast and like dive deeper to be like, this is a oversaturated niche market because everyone now has the ability to make a podcast, design a map,
Hmm.
make a subclass. Like the tools are out there.
Yeah. But quality matters.
And
I'll be honest with you. There's a
100%.
lot of D&D podcasts or role playing podcasts, and I listen to them and I go, oh, I don't want to listen to this anymore. Like I'm not
Hmm.
naming any names. I can remember them, but they're
Sure.
boring. They're monotone,
Yeah.
or just like, or they're speaking not to me, I think. And when I listened to yours, which I hadn't heard of before, I saw the post. I don't know if I saw it on Blue Sky or if I saw it on the Rising Tide board, or someone posted it there
Mm.
somewhere. And I said, oh, I want to sign up for this. And I listened to a few episodes. I was like, no, this one is, I'm not just saying this because you let me on. Um,
Thank you.
like this is an engaging podcast. The conversational tone is something you can listen to. It's not just someone speaking at you, and the subject matter is worthwhile and
Yeah.
engaging, and the guests you have on are delightful. So,
Thank you.
this is a good show. I
Yeah.
obviously, anyone listening to this, you've already been listening for several minutes if this is your first episode, but there's other episodes. Keep going.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I, I'm curious if there is a general feeling to the actual plays that have captured your attention at all. As someone who produces fictional audio dramas, I guess is like, do you lean, do the ones that have held you lean a little more in that direction, where I like what I might call uh, lightly scripted but improvised drama versus group of friends at a table playing a game that happens to be recorded. I feel like those are kind of the
I
ends of the
I think
spectrum
that
in
I
there.
am the first is
Mm,
generally better. I don't know if I was always
hmm.
that way. Back
Sure.
in 2009 or so, when the idea of actual play podcasts first was a
Yeah.
thing, I was trying to find some good ones, and a lot of them again had the same problem. Like I was saying with the
Yeah.
like this is like a meta game podcast. We're not in a
Sure.
game, but whatever the term is for that, talking about games instead of being in a game.
Yeah.
It had the same problem as a lot of that type of podcast has, being monotone, poor sound quality, not engaging, or just listening to someone like do combat for 3 hours while they're just fighting the
It's a
same
lot. It's
spider.
like it's like becomes like a sports cast at a certain point,
Yeah,
and it's like kind of
and
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and they can be interesting. That can be done
Hmm.
well. Um, Critical Role, I first discovered them through Vine. Like I was just
Hmm.
scrolling through Vine and I saw like Matt Mercer and his table of people talking about D&D, and like there was some like he was just acting out a scene of his home game. And I was all
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god, these people, I fucking hate them. They're all too good
Ha.
looking and professional. Oh
Uh-huh.
no, I am acting, and they're good at acting, and
Yeah.
they're all like, well, of course, I'm." Yeah, I was like, "Fuck you for being so attractive."
And good acting and like good storytellers.
And having
Yeah.
so much talent. Ah, you dick.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
100%.
but I didn't ever really get into their podcast or their stream that much. I've an episode here or there. They're
Sure.
long and they role
They're
play every like buying some new horseshoes might take an hour, and so it's not for me. But I'm glad that people like it. And I listened to one called Drunks and Dragons, which was later
mhm.
changed to Greetings Adventures. I listened to the whole first arc and about the first 20 episodes or so of their second arc, and then I kind of fell off of it. But they're fun. They seem like really good people. I used to sit in on their live streams, um,
Mhm.
and they were great. And they were very much a like a beer and pretzels round the table
Sure.
game, but it developed the storyline like games often
Yeah.
do. And they were also just very funny, like just naturally funny people.
Really
And
helps.
yeah, that does help. And of course, I went through the Adventure Zone, the first few arcs that they did, and the only one that I really listen to now regularly,
Mm.
like I watched Dimension 20, but other than Fantasy High, I usually watch like one or two episodes and then go, okay, I'll get back to this later, and just never get around to
Mhm.
it. And I listen to Worlds Beyond Number, which is probably the
Mhm.
best actual play. I mean, it is when you have these talented improv actors, and there's
Sure.
definitely some setup for like before like they don't. It's not scripted, but there's the hey Lou, we're going to do a story arc where your character is going to
Yeah.
have this difficult thing.
Yeah.
But there's got to be some degree of that because they just like pull it right out of the
Yeah.
tank,
And
and also they're incredibly gifted
yeah.
people.
I would say that's one of the ones like very far on the like towards audio drama end of the spectrum, that
Yeah,
like it's, yes, of course they're rolling dice. It is obviously improvised, but there's narrative beats and arcs and true storytelling in
right.
this way, that they're really aiming for something that becomes more dramatic and more full over time. Um, yeah. Uh, I had half of a question about that, and then I lost half of it. And if I keep talking, maybe I'll find it again. Do you do you think that there is there a correlation between the skills you developed, like writing and running games for all this time, and those you've developed writing for your audio dramas?
Mm.
or like
Probably.
or how
Yeah.
tenuous a connection or how strong a connection is
So
there between
I
writing for audio
go
drama and
almost out of
improvising?
my way to make sure that
Mm,
my fantasy drama story, A Bird for a Heart, I almost go out of my way to make sure that it doesn't feel like a D&D game.
mm-hmm,
That it doesn't have there's not an elf or a bard or a story of a band of adventurers in that way. It's
mm-hmm.
just not that kind of story. It's closer in tone to The Last Unicorn, probably. But I mean, I'm giving myself too much praise to
Yeah,
say that, but that's what I'm shooting
I'll
for.
take it. Yeah, totally.
Um, but the the when it comes to when I'm writing role playing game stuff, I definitely by playing go, oh shit, I should have done this. Like as I'm setting up
Mm,
a
mm-hmm,
scene where like, oh, you're in, the pirate lord's lair and he's, off plundering, but you can sneak around his cabin before he catches you. And the players start like go, I look for this. I think, oh, I didn't think to put one of those in there. But yeah, you
mm-hmm.
find one of those, like what a
Sure.
treasure map or a dagger or whatever that they. And now, if I'm going to publish that later, I go, oh, make sure that I put that in there so it looks
Mm-hmm.
like whoever wrote this knew the players would be looking for that. And you
Yeah.
can't do that with fiction because you don't have players fucking up your shit all the time. So I wish maybe I
Uh-huh.
could have someone
Yeah.
tell me like this is what the character should be doing. I do get that 6 months later after it's already out there.
Sure.
But it's too late.
Do you do you well, so one of the things that I think that highlights about sort of the difference here is RPGs, tabletop RPGs are collaborative storytelling. Everyone has to be involved and you really are feeding off of what your players give you. Most DMs. I'm
Mhm.
sure some DMs and or modules like are very very set in stone, but a lot of times there's room for everyone to offer and say yes and. Um, when you're creating for your podcast, are you the only creative voice and the person at the writing, or do you like to have like to bounce those ideas off of your voice actors or other
Well,
people on your
I
creative
don't
team?
have any voice actors.
I take
So
it back.
what I do, they're not really audio dramas, they're more like audio books that I put out
Cool.
one
Uh-huh.
episode at a time, one chapter at a time. So Nothing Is Wrong is my horror slash weird fiction anthology, which started because I was listening to Old Gods of Appalachia, and it was
Mm-hmm.
so engrossing. Like this is Cam and Steve, I can't remember their last names, but the creators of that
Yeah.
show. Um, they're creating this like it's about their childhood, where they grew up, the myths and stories
Yeah.
of their youth. And I thought I got to do that, but for southern New Jersey suburb bullshit. And so I
Cool.
started writing that, and it became so autobiographical
Mm-hmm.
that like there's a character that's based on myself as a child, and there's a character based on my sister and my older brother as a child, and people that I didn't like get killed sometimes, and so
Sure. Why not?
um and this has nothing to do with your question, but like that became my spouse calls it my therapy because there's one episode
Sure.
all about this angry boomer aged man who gets unstuck in time, kind of like Billy Pilgrim, and
Mm-hmm.
horrible things happen throughout his life. He's going back and forth throughout his life, and he's the cause of all the problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I based him a little bit on my father, and
Sure.
and my spouse Heather. They said to me,
There are long traditions of art being
like
used as
like
therapeutic
this is
context.
your
Yeah,
therapy,
absolutely.
Michael. It's
Mm-hmm.
doing
Mm-hmm.
this, and
Yeah.
um, it's cheaper.
Sure.
My insurance might cover this, and
Yeah.
and um and other than Heather, I don't really. Sometimes my daughter, Scarlett, I will bounce stuff off of her when I'm writing. Usually, A Bird for a Heart.
Mm-hmm.
The protagonist is a young woman. I call originally 10 years ago. I was writing a story called "The Girl with a Bird for a Heart," and it's about literally a
Mm.
girl who has a bird for a heart,
Mm-hmm.
like a
Mm-hmm.
hole in her chest and a cage, and there's a bird in there,
Yeah.
and that's the premise. And I changed the title because at the same time, the girl with the dragon tattoo and Gone Girl were both really
Yep.
big, and
Yep.
so I thought I gotta get girl out of the title, and maybe that's infantilizing to call the main character a girl. I do refer to her as the girl within the text, though.
Sure.
and there's another character called the Boy who does not have a name in the text. I've never given him a name. I don't think I ever will. Maybe when he grows up, I might call him the Man. But but
Sure.
but other than that, but
Yeah. Well, so you are making the entirety of the creative
right,
decision. So
yeah,
you're
and I
so
and I do all the audio myself,
yeah.
and then I go
Yeah.
to Scarlett and say, "Was this a normal thing for a young woman to say? Does that dialogue sound weird?" Or I'll say to Heather, "Does that sound scary enough? Or is that too scary when
Uh-huh.
the demon does this or does that?" And you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's helpful to have
Amazing.
someone, but it's literally
Absolutely.
in the moment, that
Yeah.
I'll ask these
What
questions.
and again, it's just like the comparison between a personal solo artistic project that may or may not be therapeutic, as it turns out, and sitting at a table with four, five, six other people who
Mhm.
are all contributing moments to that story.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a world of difference, and
yeah.
I um sometimes when I am writing adventures, though, what the players do absolutely informs what if I'm going to
Hmm.
publish this and put it into something else,
Sure.
that that's so super helpful and disruptive.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love this.
One of my
Amazing.
other one shots that's up on Drive Through RPG right now is called The Marvelous Tower of Hoot, Hut, with an umlaut.
Uh-huh.
And it's about a mobile tower, no relation to any other moving castles you may have heard of.
Of course
And
not.
and I Googled, Bot and or Mott and Bailey castles so that would look somewhat historically accurate, and made this just the only the tower has legs, and
Hmm.
and I ran that because my players were playing with a deck of many things, and they pulled the one that gives you
Mm-hmm.
your own free fortress, and so they have to
Uh-huh.
go and clear it out. And I said, well, why don't I give the fortress some legs? And
Yeah.
And so I decided to write that into like a one or two shot module, which ends with a dragon in the top of the tower, and to clear out the dragon to claim this
Yeah.
rundown anthropomorphic tower. And so like, because my players wanted that, that now is something that you can buy online for um I don't know, like $5. I think I made it
Hmm.
or something like that, for
Yeah.
$2. And the the where are they going with that? Like, if my one player didn't pull that deck of many things card, I would not have thought to
Right.
make that. And oddly enough, I was just trying to come up with creatures that would be in the tower. And since I decided that it was a tower that was once owned by a mage slash artificer that is filled with other magical wondrous things in the castle
Hmm.
and the surrounding areas, and there's a forge. I thought, oh no, a forge should have a salamander or a fire elemental in it that the players
Hmm.
can run into. And then it wasn't until the night that I was playing it for my players that they were like, "You like Calcifer?" I was like, "Oh shit, I forgot that he was in that." And I've read the book and
Uh-huh.
seen the movie, and every time I crack an egg, I think of that movie because I crack it the same way that Hal does because I saw him
Hmm.
do it. I thought it was cool, and
Yeah.
um, so oddly enough, like I think about that every day, and then the connection between Calcifer and the fact I thought there should be a fire
Hmm.
elemental living in the forge didn't even occur to me.
And, well, it's one of those things where all art is theft, right? Like
Yeah,
I think as you were just saying it, was like, well, that sounds totally logical to me. In a magical walking
right,
tower, you don't want to you don't have firewood, you don't have anywhere to keep that shit. So there's
right.
probably some sort of spirit or something that's like in the forge or in the kitchen, as it might be. Um, and someone with really good IP happened to get there first and make it a recognizable thing in their world. Um, this reminded me of something that I was thinking about a little bit earlier. You've been making maps and these other things for a long, long time, and different tools have become available to do this.
Mhm.
Do you still use Photoshop, as you mentioned, or have you switched to
Yeah.
one of the other
So
many other things?
I'm stubborn. I
Yeah,
so
same,
I
very
I also
same.
do web comics. I had Although my
Hmm.
web comic is just dead on the vine. It's called Rook and Sketchy Magic. Another plug. I got a lot of things to plug. But
We will plug all of them in the show
I've
notes.
got another 50 pages to finish the main storyline of that, and there's like 113 pages so far, and maybe in the next couple of years I'll get that done. But I've been drawing webcomics for, as long as that's been a thing. And
Yeah.
my way of doing it was always, well, I'll draw it in Adobe Flash, or also now
Mm-hmm.
called Adobe Animate, because I like the drawing tools in that app. And then I'll save that as a JPEG, import that JPEG into Photoshop at really high resolution, and then convert the lines
Yeah.
to a layer and then color it in Photoshop. And that's how I make my maps too. And everyone else I know has like, no, I switched to Clip Studio Paint 5, 10 years ago. And fuck
Sure.
Adobe. It's like, well, I've tried to use Clip Studio Paint. I can't learn it. I'm too old to learn new things. Clearly, my brain is full, and so I still use the same ridiculous
Mm-hmm.
process. And there's a lot of things like Incarnate, Dungeon Scroll. I use sometimes just to make a quick
Mm-hmm.
dungeon, just as a
Sure.
layout. It's very useful. Um, but like I wouldn't use Incarnate for anything that I publish because that's like using elements that have already been made by someone else. I might have
Uh-huh.
to make it myself to call it mine.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Wow.
Possibly
So
legally, I do. I don't know, but in my heart, for
that I
sure.
mean, I have no idea. Well, I think there's some amount of gray area between
Right.
publishing a thing that's available for free and asking people for money for it. So
Right.
if I am following that right, like each element in a map that you've created that is designed to be sold and published will have been made as a small thing in Animate and then imported into the larger map and like put in its place.
No, I draw the
Not
whole
quite.
map out
Whole map.
in
Okay.
Animate,
Okay. Okay. There we go.
most of the maps are like 24 by 36
Sure.
on average, or smaller. So it's not like I'm making, I've done world maps too. I've moved away from world maps for D&D games recently because you don't need a world map. You need a regional map, of where the players are going to actually be, unless it's a
Yeah.
game about
Yeah.
traveling the whole world.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it depends very slightly on the story
Mhm.
scale that you're trying to tell. If
They're
at some
fun to
point
draw though.
the
Yeah.
far side, yeah, totally.
I have tons of them.
Um, yeah. Well, I hope more people will find them as a result of this. Michael, I believe it is time to ask you the most important questions that we
Mhm.
ask anyone on this show ever, which is, what is your favorite class and subclass? And I am really curious also if uh, previous editions of D&D did something better than current. I mean, I know Ranger is the classic example.
Right.
And so I think what I'm saying is this, multiple answers, totally fine. Answers from previous editions, totally fine. All interesting data.
Mhm. So a lot of AD&D classes, they all suck in
Mm-hmm.
retrospect. They were just a mess.
Sure.
But, I mean, they were good for their time, but it was before the idea of game design as like an actual
Yeah.
exercise it
Yeah.
was even contemplated. It was more like, let's just make this up. Everything was ad
Yeah.
hoc. Bards were the worst, in my opinion, at that time. Um, Read the player's handbook and just see how bards work and understand. And monks were probably the second worst. They were fun to play, but
Sure.
they didn't make any sense. But I suppose my favorite character. See, I really think it's more about favorite characters I've played instead of favorite character
Mm.
classes.
Sure,
Um,
sure. I've asked the class question of people partly because I'm keeping a spreadsheet, and at some point I'm going to
mhm.
have a really cool graphic of what all my guests liked. But I
I've always
also,
sorry.
mm, I was
I've
just going to say,
always
like,
sorry. You go.
please, I I I have characters that I love that have been classes that I actually did not enjoy playing or didn't
Mhm.
like as much. Like I will just state flat out, I love wizards. I always think wizards are like the best class and will play one at the drop of a fucking hat. And having said that, I've like one of my favorite characters ever created and played is like people confuse her for a barbarian. She is in fact a vengeance paladin fighter multi-class, but like,
Right.
you know, completely opposite. So
I get that.
amazing characters you played, totally valid. If there is like a class that has just spoken to you
Mhm.
more than others for unreasonable and unknowable reasons over the years.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of
Also
what
curious.
classes have I played twice in any edition. I don't think there are any.
Oh, interesting.
Because I do. I mean,
Cool.
I'm often DM, but also
Uh-huh.
because I every game I try to go, well, I'm going to do something different this time around and see what else I can do. My
Yeah.
favorite character of all time is probably he's an NPC now in my dungeon company setting. He's probably my kobold artificer Hex Arcana,
Mm.
and
Okay.
Tex, like I love introducing him to other players because
I love that.
they're sitting in the tavern, and I say, "In walks the biggest goddamn kobold you've ever seen, a full 3.5 feet tall,
Ha.
but a half foot of that is his hat." So
That's
he's
I
like,
love that
and he
so
acts like
much.
he's massive. He's like, "Yeah, I'm Tex Arcana. How you do? Howdy,
Uh-huh.
you know,
Uh-huh.
don't be frightened by my strength." He's got a strength score of like 7, but he's an
I
artificer
love that.
and he's a
Yeah.
artillerist. So he has 2 big honking guns and a cowboy hat, and he's afraid of nothing. And
That is so great.
he often
I
gets
love
hurt,
that.
but he gets back up again. And so I love that character. My second favorite was probably in a previous campaign I played with my friend Eric as the DM. We played Tomb of Annihilation,
Mm-hmm.
and he heavily modified the campaign with lots and lots of wild magic tables that he got from
Cool.
all across the internet, and crazy things would happen in that game. And I started with the premise that we were going with was that there's this wealthy family that all the other characters were part of. One character was the bodyguard to the wealthy family. The other were members of the family. One was actually the imaginary friend of the sorcerer, but was real, it
Mm-hmm.
turns out. And I played a Harrington drunken master monk named Patchy Jack. He had an eye patch and one ear was missing. And Patchy Jack was there to rob the family by pretending to be their coachman before they go off on a trip. And he was just loading the coach up with all of his stolen goods. And then they suddenly get zapped into Chult by a wild magic surge. And then the
Mm-hmm.
adventure goes from there. And throughout
Cool.
the course of that storyline, he got so deformed and distorted by wild magic that he had robotic skin and was turning into an owl and lost one of his arms in the I think it was a sphere of annihilation
Amazing.
situation,
Uh-huh.
but and he was just completely a different person. And then he died at the very end. They resurrected him as a woodwode, I think. So we did a follow up campaign where he was basically like a wooden bunny rabbit, but he quit being a monk, became an artificer. So I guess I played artificer twice, but
Uh-huh.
but he was a whatchamacallit, potions. I can't do the word alchemist, and
Alchemist. Yeah.
he opened up a bar in Sigil, and so and he's retired or semi-retired in his tiki bar.
It Given that you played them twice, is there something that you like love inordinately about artificers?
I do like that they are the oddball class. You know, they're not in any of
Mm-hmm.
the official books ever.
Yep.
Um, they, I like that many DMs don't know the rules about them. So if I am playing one, I'd be like, yeah, I can do that and see what the reaction is.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Um,
totally.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I love playing
Amazing.
wizards also.
Yeah.
Particularly, I love playing evoker wizards because then I can just cast fireball in melee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah. And you and your
and
teammates can just avoid all of it. Yeah.
and I only need 2 spells: fireball and lightning bolt. You cast fireball on everything except if it's immune to fire, then you cast lightning bolt,
Uh-huh.
and it
Uh-huh.
gets you through 99% of all situations. The door's locked,
It's
lightning bolt. Yeah.
You never know when that'll work.
Okay.
Stranger things have happened for sure. Amazing. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to have many, many heaping piles of show notes. Please go check out Michael's work on Drive-Thru RPG. You can just click a simple little link. Michael, if people want to find you on the internet or things that you've made, where can they find you?
Well, my main internet home now is Blue Sky, where I am Michael J. Patrick, spelled like the name. And it's also where I am on almost every social media platform. I'm Michael J. Patrick. I got rid of Twitter, or whatever you want to call it. But I'm on Tumblr.
Bottomless cesspool.
I want to get rid of Instagram. I don't really have it on my phone anymore. I'm kind of done with Meta. If it weren't for the fact that it's the only way that I can keep in contact with my sister is through Facebook.
Oh my
Otherwise,
God,
I would just get rid of that.
It's horrible. I really wish we had a better alternative someday, soon, hopefully.
I need to know when it's people's birthday. That's the only thing it's good for.
That is my only interaction with it over the last almost a year at this point,
right.
9 months. I'm like, I just want to see people's birthdays. I don't want anything else.
But I have a link tree also under Michael J. Patrick, and but Blue Sky is where I'm most active and will spout random political opinions if you don't want to hear them. Sorry.
Hey, Blue Sky is easier to filter those content. So follow Michael on Blue Sky and check out all of our links to the many, many, many awesome places you can find Michael's work.
Thank you.
Of course. You hopefully are already following The Roll Report on social medias, but if you're not, you can. We are at The Roll Report Cast on many social platforms of your choice. You can also perhaps leave us a 5-star rating and or review on your podcast listening platform of choice. That would be super cool. Helps other people find the show. I feel like there was something else that I'm supposed to say here. Oh yeah, if you really like what we're doing and you want more, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/therollreport for as little as $1 a month. And that would be super cool. I think that's the wrap up. Michael, thank you again. What a pleasure to talk to you and to hear the breadth of experience that you've had playing this game that we love.
We've only scratched the surface.
You know what? We'll just have to do another session at some point,
right.
Awesome. You and I just have to hang out. That sounds great too.
Sure, you can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're on the West Coast, maybe not anytime soon.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right.
Thank you, listeners, for listening, and until next time, roll more dice. Does good things when you do.
Don't eat them.
Oh God. Unless you make edible dice. If you make specifically edible dice, maybe not out of resin. All right.